Thank you, Anna and all. I have a fiery polemical paper to share with you today that begins to put my transdisciplinary environmental humanities research in conversation with autism research for the first time. What I have to present today falls into three parts. The first, an outline of the autist-oppressing predicament of lean culture. The second, an introduction to the innovative method I call gleanologics that draws on the salvaging rights known as gleaning. And the third, a consideration of gleaning and autist knowledge ecologies. So that's lean culture, followed by ways of gleaning lean culture, and then exploring some auticologies of gleaning. And if that feels like a lot of strange, slippery words, great, as that is for reasons that will become clear, itself part of this paper's contribution. Since the term lean was coined to describe, develop, and disseminate the efficiency innovations of the Toyota production system to an Anglophone audience, lean thinking has spread across the world. First used by John Krafkick in the 1988 Slow Management Review, the concept was influentially expanded, reaching a wide readership in Womack and Jones's business bestseller, Lean Thinking. If you have ever interacted with any form of supermarket, you will have lived experience of engaging with lean managed space. In brief, to its proponents, lean production is lean because it uses less of everything. I quote, "It does more and more with less and less." As Kim Moody observes, in spite of substantial criticism, the basic features of lean production as developed in the automobile industry in Japan have become perceived as global best practice in one industry after another and have spread across the world. Lean continues to be adopted enthusiastically across a multitude of sectors, with healthcare, higher education, government, and agriculture continually reorganized along lean lines. Whilst it is beginning to be more widely known that lean-specific kinds of violence operate unequally upon creatures and places on class, race, species, gender, and ability grounds, the particular oppressions that lean management principles enact on transnational autistic communities have yet to be explored. Lean controls its meanings with whole lexicons and visual languages, including extensive conduct literature that concerningly in the last decade has extended into grassroots activist circles. All emphasize ableist kinds of acceptable talk modeled on civil conversational fluency. As trade unionist Jean Booth explores, these modes of communication of conformity are particularly, though not exclusively, autist oppressing strategies. We could talk or not copiously and copiously not talk about the many problems of talking lean, as equally important are the issues from which this proliferation of discourse distracts. The Lean Management Glossary has set the terms of lean culture from its popular beginnings in the work of Womack and Jones through to numerous lean dictionaries, which instruct on lean thinking or instruct how not to think more fully about the word lean. For the under-acknowledged genealogy of the Toyota production system and so lean production is not only Ford's earlier method of creating a car, but of carnage. Accounts of the significance of lean by both its founders and critics in their silence dissemble the link between lean flows and slaughterhouse disassembly. Ford writes of his inspiration for the assembly line, I quote, "The idea came in a general way from the overhead trolley that the Chicago Packers use in dressing beef." While debates about lean from pro-business commentators and their counterparts compare and contrast Toyota to Ford without reference to meat production, they not only, in the words of historian James Barrett, deprive the Packers of their rightful title as mass production pioneers who developed the assembly line technique, but sanitize lean histories by suppressing the T-bone behind the Model T. As Naomi Shukin argues, the Fordist production line is premised on the ulterior logistics of animal disassembly that it technologically replicates and advantageously forgets. Lean is more than a term for doing more with less. Lean thinking is founded upon lean meat. In addition to accelerating production and consumption that includes the contemporary slaughterhouse, Lean's rise tacitly inscribes across culture the idea that there is an essential meat. The founder of the Toyota production system, Taiichi Ono, writes, "It's a dangerous idea to trim down management so much that you cut into the essential meat. Trimming down by cutting into the needed meat hardly constitutes the true meaning of successful lean management." At every level, transnational programs that foster lean culture attempt to capture hearts and minds, make us live and breathe lean, and operate on racialized lines. What advocates of lean call the creation of a workplace-level lean culture comes to characterize culture at large. Lean's the way we do things here, 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 and here. What then is the lean freight of deep pressure in the autistic construction of autistic docility, limiting liberation to building one's own squeeze shoot, or the recommended weighted therapies for the lean workplace? Due to what cultural forces did a discussion of monotropism in the participatory autism research project Flow Unlocked become an emphasis on the same psychological flow states that Lean's popularizers describe as, quote, convenient for us lean thinkers because no attention is left over? Are we to interpret it as a coincidence that in recent times, so many resources have been directed towards techniques to incorporate autistic people in workplace cultures after an autistic person has inspired the largest series of global strikes in history for climate justice, speaking out with a radical and evidence-based message against the harms of economic growth and animal agriculture? To use Thunberg's words, on fire, the only sensible thing to do, not doing, is to pull the emergency brake. Stop. This is the time to wake. Thunberg's powerful statement that now is not the time for speaking politely or focusing on what we can or cannot say is most meaningful when considered in the context of lean language. So to bear witness to this together as it really is, for all the abstraction and effort to detach it, lean is an extension of slaughterhouse practice. And this extends particularly to autistic lives. Work on lean in health was invited as part of the B.F. Skinner lecture series at last year's annual Applied Behavioral Analysis Convention, as leading ABA organizations and practitioners explore, I quote, a methodology designed to eliminate problems, remove waste, to provide a better response to the customer's needs. Are lean lines currently being applied in order to help torture autistic people more effectively? The phrase lean culture is here gleaned from management handbooks for our critical discourse, as it has never before been more important to name and in so doing call out the investments of lean culture than in our current climate crisis, in which the hegemonic production of lean meat and its byproducts is the largest single cause of greenhouse emissions and a leading contributor to climate change. Yet across multiple discourses, the slaughterhouse source strategies of lean are routinely made to seem green. The associations of the word lean are then some of the most important to consider in the transdisciplinary environmental humanities today. Continuing the work of autist activists from Jim Sinclair, Daniel Salomon, Helen Mirren, Selina Kamwa, and Greta Thunberg, my method of genealogics explores the relationship between the practice of gathering after the harvest and gathering knowledge known as gleaning, the gesture of leaning, and the genealogy of global lean management technologies. Gleaning lean culture offers an act of reappropriation that exceeds description. And this is important. It calls out a phenomenon that already exists in language, using that language against itself. A gleanological approach finds in the gleaning of lean culture from management handbooks a critical term for a technocratic control society that is also in part its own technique of resistance. Whilst the Frankfurt School's proto-lean manager Odysseus plugs ears with wax, ensuring that his workers must look ahead with alert concentration and ignore anything which lies to one side, gleaning lean culture unplugs our ears to the word lean's problematically stifled polysemy. As I argue most fully in a recent issue of the Journal of Interdisciplinary Studies in Literature and Environment, and develop with experimental writing in Amelia Quinn and Benjamin Westwood's excellent collection Thinking Veganism in Literature and Culture, Gleanologics unpacks the patterns of violence and ecocide encoded in the lean management of everyday life. Gleanologics with Remy Yago's rhetoric that leans against the logic of lean culture as a gleaner leans in lean times. Just as a gleaner bends to gather the remains of harvest with movements more expansive than those the norms of work discipline permit for its reapers, so the gleanologist with detail orientations leans to attend to the language of lean production with an arc of attention in excess of that required for lean language's productive functions. Beyond a stimp term or Delingly's scrambled sound print, Gleanologics develops, embodies, and performs divergent autistic knowledges. Glean cannot but alter lean. A gleanological method complicates lean logistics. It picks up on the legacies of exploitation left in the language of lean and does so in acknowledgement of interrelatedness. Just as a gleaner's labor is shaped by agricultural production, so a gleanological method is shaped by lean production. The gesture of leaning against as much a discipline produced by lean times as a technique of resistance to lean efficiencies. Just as lean is part of glean, so lean technologics are part of gleanologics, but also the logics of lean exceeded, inverted, glottally stopped. Gleaners have been taking careful, insightful, and often socially unacceptable action over millennia for subsistence, joy, and the commons. From the earliest extant gleaning narrative in the Book of Ruth to contemporary global gleaning cultures and representations, what some have recently argued to be a particularly autist constellation of qualities, including nonconformity, attention, and object orientation, are at the heart of the practice. In European history, gleaning was often permitted for disabled people, and this connection might go back to the root. The biblical Ruth, who asks for more than what she can traditionally glean by right, could have asked not out of flirtation, but from obliviousness that social conventions around gleaning were or should be any different, could have clung to Naomi as much for familiarity as familiar devotion. Ruth is not just uprooted by seeking refuge in lean times. She is as strange as rooted, not just a stranger, but odd, a moving non-mover, oddly attached and set in her ways. What can playfully be called her preservation through perseveration in gleaning, rather than a sign of her poverty, as her socioeconomic situation is the same as her sister-in-law who did not glean, a sign of an autistic woman having the relative temporary freedom to refuse production and find a sorting release. Gleaners are my autist sibling crips. As the saying doesn't go but should, if you've met one autistic person, you've started to find that we are many. Anticipating Hamza Ahsan's shy, radical ecological justice that would be glad to see the cultural destruction of those who destroy, from desire to save the earth and its resources from thoughtless plunder, filmmaker Agnes Varda sympathetically documents contemporary gleaners who state, I quote, "Salvaging is a matter of ethics. Seabirds who are totally smashed up by total pheno oil, those who will get totally smashed up by this over-consuming society, it's for them that I'm an activist. birds first. The police considered it necessary to put this person under psychiatric observation. He states, "They don't like the way I live. Being nice isn't enough for them. You have to be normal too." In the 2050 glossary of global protest, after the animal rebellion, AR is GR, the Gleaners' revolt. Historians report that numerous conditions led to the leaderless Gleaners' revolt of 2031, 650 years after the UK Peasants' Revolt of 1381. Some say this series of strikes and actions were connected to events held annually in the UK on the 12th of June, on the anniversary of the landmark lawsuit during the peak of the late 18th century enclosures known as the Great Gleaning Case, that ruled no person has at common law a right to glean in the harvest field. Others say the Gleaners' Revolt was connected to the global strikes by the transnational union RIP, begun by sick and traumatized slaughterhouse workers disproportionately affected by COVID-19 as emergency strikes for health and safety, catalyzed by Black Lives Matter in solidarity with all breathing workers and making the connection between animal agriculture and pandemics with the hashtag Respirate in Peace. Or that at the same time, autistic people with lived experience of masks and masking looked again at the poster iconography of Greenpeace's McLibel campaigns of the 1990s. Others say the Gleaners' Revolt was begun by autistic activists for socio-ecological justice from Hamza Hassan's Shy Radicals movement in response to the neurodiversity at work co-option of the early 2020s, and who, like Greta Thunberg, appreciated that we autistic are the only ones who see through the noise. To glean is to see the lean. Now lean culture demands autists to help make the world more like the slaughterhouse, and gleaners say, but what does it mean to notice that every infinity symbol includes some of Temple Grandin's slaughterhouse design? Now lean culture demands to unlock the flows of autists to help make the world more like the slaughterhouse, and gleaners say, but does the widespread lean industrialization of professional caring, with its standardized ways of working and communicating, negatively impact autist patient access to healthcare and the attendant inequalities and crises in health and well-being around longevity and suicidality in our community? Now, lean culture demands autists to help make the world more like the slaughterhouse, and gleaners. Now, lean culture calls on autists to help make the world more like the slaughterhouse, and come, creatures of this planet, and let us all assemble to treat upon this matter of lean thinking's violence terrible. For we shall rue if it be true, when lean be undertaken, or where we feed and care and seed lean thinking's globalization. Lean oppressing all and increasingly as autists with myths of liberation, and we too quickly bought it. But comrades, thou behold us now, let wild oats be this venture. Now rising seas and warm degrees destroy where lean does enter. So let us first entreat our ancient water nurses to show the power so great as to help to drain Lean's purses, and send us good old Captain Flood to hold Lean from its battle of ableist old domination codes that treat us all like cattle. The feathered fowl have wings to fly to other nations, but we'll have no such things to aid our transportations. We must make place and order space, but never reach a lean one. Instead, we see we must agree, lean limits what can become.